Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would talk about this little particular video that I found very personally interesting. And of course, overall, this is going to be a video by the boxing channel called Boxing Ego. And sometimes I like to review other videos on this channel, mainly overall because I find it very particularly interesting and I can get different sides. Not only just my side within the video, but also sides from other videos because, whether people overall believe it or not, I don't necessarily disagree with every single one of the points that some of these guys overall bring up. Now, do I think that a lot of the channels that I tend to review or certain videos overall that I tend to review, do I believe that some of these guys, that their bias and overall that their emotions, that they let that get in the way of overall their opinions about certain fighters in certain situations? Yes, absolutely. But I don't necessarily disagree with every point overall that they make. And one thing I'll say about Boxing Ego is this. Even though overall I have been a little bit criticizing towards him in the past in some of my videos, I don't necessarily think that he's a bad analyzation artist. I don't think that he's a bad breakdown artist. I think actually a lot of the times that he brings up very, very solid points within that of his videos. Now, do I think that a lot of the times that he lets his emotion and his bias get in the way of certain fighters, especially when it comes to his certain racial favorite fighters overall and also certain fighters with the PBC? Yes, I do, but overall there is certain things that I do think Boxing Ego is right on the money on. And one thing that I've always agreed with him on is that of the Terence Bud Crawford situation. And the thing is about Terence Bud Crawford is that there's so many different opinions about him when it comes down to it, and he very clearly, in my view, is a very extraordinarily talented fighter. There is no doubt about that. But he's almost like one of those basketball players, almost like an Anthony Davis when it comes down to where people used to rank him once upon a time within the top 5. People even used to rank Anthony Davis just based off of his talent alone over certain people like that of a Stephen Curry. I'll never forget it. Stephen A. Smith at one point in time ranked Anthony Davis above Steph Curry, a 2-time champion at that point in time, a 2 or 3-time champion, and a 2-time MVP, and somebody who had actually led a team overall to an NBA Finals even before Kevin Durant got there. He put Anthony Davis above that guy. And that's why I said Anthony Davis, in my view, and certain people may disagree, I believe that Anthony Davis was the most overrated all-star level player throughout that of the 2010s because the way that he was rated, he literally had no results whatsoever with that of the New Orleans Pelicans, but that's a conversation for another time. But I can almost see it a little bit similarly with that of Terence Bud Crawford. There's so many people that would debate that Terence Bud Crawford is debatably the #1 pound-for-pound fighter. Dante's Boxing Nation and Aki TV, 2 channels that I like to review here and there. Overall, they claim that Terence Bud Crawford is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter for non-international boxing, even though he's been very criticizing of Terence Bud Crawford. He at one point in time has claimed that Terence Bud Crawford is the #1 pound-for-pound fighter in all of boxing. And even at one point in time, maybe about 5 to 6 years ago, I can't really remember, whenever that Joyous Ndango fight was, I said, you know what, this dude really has the potential to become the true #1 pound-for-pound fighter in all of boxing. He could debatably be that. He looks that special. But Terence Bud Crawford, he looks the part, and it looks like he fits the part. But he hasn't really been in the part yet. And some people overall, they're not really going to understand what I mean by that. What I mean is that the 3 best wins in his career is over a Yuriorkis Gamboa that was a decent amount smaller than him. And on top of that, some would say the year layoff. I'm not really going to bring that up. But what I am going to say all in all is this. Yuriorkis Gamboa, it really is even a debate if Gamboa was ever purely a true A-grade fighter in the first place. It just is what it is. Now, if you wanted to claim that, you could. But I wouldn't rank the win any higher than that of an A-. And then you have that of Victor Postal. Of course, he was coming off of the win over Lucas Matisse, the very tough Argentine fighter, who was a little bit undersized in some of his fights, including against that of Victor Postal, at least in terms of height and reach. But of course, Matisse was favored to win that fight. Victor Postal put on a very good performance and was actually able to pound Lucas Matisse into submission. And then, of course, Terence Bud Crawford, at the time when it was looked at as somewhat of a possibly competitive fight, even though that's not what the odds makers said, Terence Bud Crawford, of course, was able to dominate him. I think I only had Victor Postal winning 2 rounds, But the problem is that Victor Postal, pretty much what I always thought he was going to be. I don't think anyone ever truly thought that Victor Postal, that he was ever truly going to be a world beater. And ever since the Terence Bud Crawford loss, he's pretty much proved to me to be what I thought he was always going to be, which is a guy that is a decent fighter, but never a great one. A guy that pretty much was going to lose every single matchup in his career against a true A-grade fighter, which is exactly what ended up happening. He also ended up losing a very tough and competitive fight to Jose Ramirez, and also a fight to Josh Taylor. And most recently, he retired after getting his ass whooped, I believe, over Gary Antoine Russell Jr., or one of the Russell brothers. I can't remember. The one that's at 140 pounds right now. Anyway, but when it comes down to it, and then, of course, you have the biggest win hands down in his career, in my opinion, which is the Sean Showtime Porter win. And that, in my opinion, is the only win in Terence Bud Crawford's career that is 100% definitively A grade. And it's not even an A to A plus win. It's an A minus win. Because to be fair, Sean Porter is pretty much what you would call an elite gatekeeper. But he's not even what I would call an elite gatekeeper. Those are certain fighters like that of a Miguel Cotto or a Sugar Shane Mosley. I don't even think that I can say that Sean Porter is on their level. I think that he's about a level or two below them. So Sean Porter is about an A-minus level fighter. Of course, he ended up getting wins over Paulie Malignaggi and Devin Booker, excuse me, Devin Alexander, overall when it comes down to it. And of course, he was also able to get the win, I believe, over Adrian Broner and a multitude of former champions or champions, Danny Swift Garcia as well. He was able to beat those guys. But it was pretty much known overall, especially ever since that he lost to Kell Brook, Special K, that if you were going to be a guy that was potentially overall within that top 1 to top 2 realm, Sean Porter overall was more than likely not going to be able to beat you. He didn't beat Kell Brook, he didn't beat Keith one-time Thurman, and he didn't beat Errol Spence. Now, he gave them hell in each and every single fight, and I'll give Terence Bud Crawford this. He was able to beat Sean Porter in a way that no other fighter was able to do. He was the only one that was actually ever able to stop him, so I give him that amount of credit. But the problem with Terence Bud Crawford is this. He's been ordered now to fight a Latino fighter. I'm not sure if he's Mexican or where he comes from. A guy that I believe is 22-1 or 23-1. A guy that lost to an up-and-coming prospect in Rashidi Ellis, who just recently lost to an Argentine journeyman. When it came down to it, this guy has already lost to Rashidi Ellis. And this is the guy that Terence Bud Crawford has been ordered to fight for that of his WBO mandatory. And I don't really blame all this on Terence Bud Crawford. Of course, from what I hear, and now this is the rumors that I have heard. If I'm wrong about this, someone correct me. But Terence Bud Crawford apparently was not able to fight Virgil Ortiz, possibly next because Virgil Ortiz turned down his WBO mandatory, or at least turned down to fight Terence Bud Crawford in order to fight the Lithuanian kid, I believe, that is Staniosis, which is a great fight, by the way. I'm not really quite sure how that fight is going to end up. Both of those fighters, in my opinion, are actually on a very similar caliber. I would predict Virgil Ortiz maybe by a smidge, by a slight degree, but that's a very, very tough fight. Could go either way. But when it comes down to it all in all, once again, I'm not blaming all of this on Terence Bud Crawford. But there's certain people that like to debate that Terence Bud Crawford, that he is at the top of the sport. Well, there's no debate that Terence Bud Crawford is atop the sport. But he's atop the sport almost kind of like how Giannis Antetokounmpo was atop the sport before he ended up winning the NBA championship. He's almost kind of like a LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant or someone all in all, to where you can tell they have the goods to be number one, but you can't really call them number one yet because they haven't really won the championship. And that's really the problem with Terence Bud Crawford. And some people may say, well, what are you talking about? Terence Bud Crawford is a three-weight division champion. He completely unified a division, and he's beaten a multitude of champions. So what are you really talking about? Here's the problem with Terence Bud Crawford once again. The biggest win in his career, hands down, and the man is about 40-0. He's had about 40 fights in his career. The biggest win, hands down, in his career is over a man that pretty much was an elite gatekeeper for that of the welterweight division. That basically would be, overall, like a Floyd Mayweather Jr. if the best win in his career was that of a Zab Judah. That's the problem that is here. And that's why, whenever I have said the conversation about Terence Bud Crawford, that Terence Bud Crawford really never truly could be ranked at the #1 pound-for-pound spot. And some of these channels ended up getting annoyed because they didn't like that Lomachenko or that Canelo Alvarez was ranked at the #1 pound-for-pound spot. And I remember watching certain videos by Dante's Boxing Nation, and he always used to say overall that, oh, well, you're calling those guys the Michael Jordan of the sport, when really it's, certain fighters like a Terence Crawford and all these other guys, but they're on, basically the coincidental list, so they don't get the same recognition. And even though I agree that certain black athletes and certain black fighters don't get the same recognition maybe as other fighters, that can be a true statement. The problem is with Terence Crawford, you cannot call him the Michael Jordan of the sport. I don't think that you can really call just someone that is currently the #1 pound-for-pound fighter the quote-unquote Michael Jordan of the sport, because what that means, at least in my view, is that they're debatably the greatest fighter of all time. And I don't think that you can really say that. But what you can say, all in all, is that they're the all-around best for their sport, or that they deserve to be in that position. And a certain amount of people, once again, who are Terence Crawford fans, or some guys from these channels, they aren't going to like it, but it just is what it is. In my opinion, Lomachenko and Canelo especially, clearly, they were both ahead of him in terms of the pound-for-pound list, because they were actually getting in with challenges in the ring that Terence Crawford was not. And once again, that's not me stating that it's all Terence Crawford's fault. But once again, if Terence Crawford, let me put it this way, if Terence Crawford were to lose his fight against Errol Spence Jr., if that fight even occurs overall this year or possibly ever, I believe that it has a great chance of occurring either this year and next year, but we'll see overall what happens. I hope that it occurs. If Terence Crawford ends up losing to that of Errol Spence Jr., who does he personally have on his resume that you can point to and say, wow, he's still an all-time great fighter? When I talk certain points about Canelo Alvarez, and I say all in all that in my view he is an all-time great fighter and that he has an all-time great resume, I get certain people overall that look at me, overall, and they're confused and they're like, oh, you just sound like another Canelita, you sound like another Canelo lover, you're just on his ball sack and all this other shit, overall, you're just, biased and all this other shit. Listen, say whatever you want about Canelo Alvarez, but Canelo Alvarez at the end of the day not only is a 4-time weight division champion and unified a division, but when you talk about clear levels of competition, the man has fought repeated A-grade fighters and fighters that possibly could potentially challenge anyone around those weight classes. Even certain fighters like Billy Joe Saunders and Callum Smith and Caleb Plant, even though people may not want to call those guys A-grade fighters, they were A-grade level fighters. You don't have to call them A+ or A, but they were on the A- level. You know why? Because Caleb Plant was able to get past Jose Uzcategui. He was also able to get past Anthony Durrell and a couple of other very decent contenders on the way up when it came down to it. Callum Smith as well, and Billy Joe Saunders, who was a 2-weight division champion when it came down to it, as well as Danny Jacobs, as well as Erislandy Lara, as well as Austin Trout, as well as Gennady Chupajiga Golovkin, as well as Miguel Cotto, as well as Sergey Kovalev. And there may even be some other ones on there that I'm not even personally mentioning. That's why Canelo Alvarez, even after his most recent dominant loss to that of Dimitri Bivol, he can still be within my top 5 pound-for-pound, because people ask me, well, why do you still have him within your top 5 pound-for-pound? Because Canelo not only has belts still at 168 pounds, but his most recent resume still dictates that I put him there. The problem is with Terence Crawford is that if he were to lose to Errol Spence Jr., what wins does he really have in his career to really qualify him as an all-time great fighter? Because certain fighters like a Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, they have a multitude of wins to qualify themselves as an all-time great fighter, even if they were to retire today, even if they were to lose again in their next fight. The problem is with Terence Crawford, he doesn't have that. If he were to lose to someone like an Errol Spence Jr. or a Jermell Charlo, without having over one of the wins over Errol Spence or Jermell Charlo, what wins can you really point to and say, oh man, Terence Crawford, he was a bad boy. Of course he was an all-time great fighter. He beat Yuriorkis Gamboa. He beat Victor Postol. He beat Sean Porter. I'm sorry, but none of those guys are definitive A-grade fighters, besides maybe Sean Porter. Gamboa, in my opinion, was never on the level of that of a Gamboa Rigondeaux. He was a guy that was very sloppy and not very defensively sound, also a little bit chinny. He was very, very defensively irresponsible, and it was only a matter of time, in my view, before he really got caught by the correct fighter. When it came down to it, that's the problem with Terence Crawford. Because once again, I think that he's an all-time great talent, but I can't call him an all-time great fighter. Because if I compare him to other all-time great fighters or great fighters, who can I really put him above? Can I put him above someone overall like a Canelo? No, certainly I can't. I can't put him above someone like a Canelo. Can I put him above someone like a Floyd Mayweather Jr. or a Manny Pacquiao? Of course not. Obviously not. He's not in their same realm. Can I put him above a Sugar Ray Leonard or a Tommy Hearns or certain things like that, Roberto Duran? Can I put him above fighters like that? No, I really can't. And that brings us overall to our next category. Can I even put him above certain fighters like that of a Miguel Cotto, of a Sugar Shane Mosley, of an Oscar De La Hoya, of a Juan Manuel Marquez? I'm not quite sure if I can put him above any of those fighters. And certain people overall may disagree, but what I'll say is this: Miguel Cotto at least has a multitude of wins that you can take a look in his career and say, you know what, those are debatably A-grade wins. He has a great win over all-time great fighter Sugar Shane Mosley. He also was able to beat Zab Judah when it came down to it, when he was still somewhat of an A- level fighter, as well as Carlos Quintana, I believe, or Katana, however you personally pronounce his name. Paulie Malignaggi. Now, not all these guys are A-grade level fighters, but he also has wins over Joshua Clottey, Margarito a little bit later on, even though, of course, he probably was not as good of a fighter then because he got caught with the hand wraps. But Miguel Cotto, Oscar De La Hoya, when it comes down to Sugar Shane Mosley, these are all fighters that at least have one very, 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 very impressive A-grade win in their career. And if we're going to go a level below them, let's talk about certain fighters like Eric Morales and a Marco Antonio Barrera. Marco Antonio Barrera has wins against, Nassim Hamed. He has wins over that of Eric Morales. He has wins overall over other certain fighters. Eric Morales has a win over Marco Antonio Barrera. He also has a win over Manny Pacquiao. I don't even think that I can put Terence Bud Crawford above those level of fighters. That's just my personal opinion. It just is what it is. And Terence Bud Crawford, even though I think that he is a great fighter, if he does not start getting some of these big wins very, very soon, he may end up just like another fighter overall that could just be another Mike Tyson or someone on the know. I'm not going to necessarily say Mike Tyson, but his career could end in a multitude of ways. That's why I say I cannot really have him at the #1 pound-for-pound spot, because I need to see truly how great you are by getting into the ring with the best of the best. And he's never really done that in terms of consistency. Once again, people can try to say all this shit about, oh, he beat Jeff Horn and he beat, Jose Benavidez and all these other guys. Those guys are not elite level fighters. It just is what it is. They're not elite level fighters, and a lot of people know that, but they gotta try to pump these guys up to make Terence Crawford's resume looks better. Those guys are not elite level fighters. Those are fighters that any decent welterweight can beat, period. Just is what it is. But anyways, Boxing Eagle is going to talk about it. I thought that I would tune in. Let's get straight into it.
Bad news. Former champion Cuban boxer Yordenis Ugas says he doesn't even know who Alexis Rocha is. Potential opponent for Terence Crawford next. That's what I want to talk about in this video. What up, Fight World? It's your boy Ego, and I'm back with some more boxing gang. So, Yordenis Ugas' verified page on Twitter, he says, this is without disrespect and excuse the question, but who is Rocha? What record do you have? Question mark. And then he's responding to someone that says, are you crazy or what? You cannot ask a question with respect. How quickly mockery and offenses come. What occurs sometimes. So he's basically saying, I'm being cool. I really don't know who this dude is. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm not trying to throw shade or anything. I don't know who he is. That's how I interpret it, right? And he also put this in Spanish. He says, I have never seen Rocha fight. I did not know him. But that doesn't mean I'm disrespecting you. It's good that you met me after the fight. I already know him. It's nothing bad, greetings. So he's saying, again, I'm not trying to violate. I just don't know who I wasn't familiar with him. So this could be Crawford's next opponent. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section of a fight. I've already stated my opinion. Another tough sell. Crawford, the only thing...
It's a very tough sell. And once again, Terence Bud Crawford, we're going to really see how truthful he is about wanting to fight Errol Spence Jr. when it comes to those fight negotiations. Because if I see Terence Bud Crawford pull this shit overall about, oh, I want 50-50 with Errol Spence, dude, that's not happening. That's not happening. And if the fight ends up falling apart because Terence Bud Crawford overall is not getting a 50-50 split and all this other bullshit, and he still seems to be getting a good cut, that will tell me how serious he was about taking this fight the whole entire time. I'm not going to spread anything over as of yet, but once again, that's going to be very interesting because Terence Bud Crawford has been bitching basically about his B-side situation for a very, very long time now. And he's just going to have to suck it up because, once again, Terence Bud Crawford, it's basically a lot of his fault to why he's in this situation. Because you could have signed with the PBC a long time ago, possibly fought fighters like Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Keith One-Time Thurman a hell of a long time ago. And this fight could have possibly already happened, but instead, a while ago, you decided to re-sign with Top Rank, and now you're still somewhat floating around. So once again, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with Mr. Terence Bud Crawford in this situation. Because if I remember right, his last fight against David Afanasian, I'm not even sure if that fight did 10,000 buys, which is an absolute flop.
I've ever questioned is Crawford's business acumen, his business savvy. If he signs with Golden Boy, which is the potential rumor, if he fights Alexis Rocha next, it does him no favors. I don't know how else to put it. I don't know any clearer. I don't think I could use any more specifics than what I am telling you right now. It does him no favors. If people are holding hope for Errol Spence, then you can kind of forget about it if he does a multi-fight deal from my perspective. That's my honest opinion, because how does making the decision to fight Alexis Rocha and or if he signs a multi-fight deal with Golden Boy bring him any closer to a completely opposite and different who at times have had a relationship that was frayed between, and I'm talking about Golden Boy and PBC. If you sign to, you're basically signing to the ops, expecting to get a fight with Errol Spence and Charlo and whoever else. It just, that doesn't make sense. If you're a crackhead, you have to go to the sides of town where they sell crack, or you go to a trap house or
That's a very interesting comparison.
whatever. The rules are very simple.
I love that that's how the first example that he thought of in his mind. Well, if you're a crackhead.
If you're looking for dope, you go to a trap house. You go to a drug dealer. It's that simple. If Crawford wants to fight Charlo, Jermell Charlo, if he wants to fight Errol Spence, you go where the action is at. Unless you're in some kind of Canelo type of position where you have the carte blanche to do whatever you want and you have all these numbers and impressive accolades financially and fiscally when it comes.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on, Mr. Ego, because you've been jumping on the train for a very long time, along with Dante's Boxing Nation and many other guys, saying that Canelo Alvarez is not the face of boxing. So why all of a sudden is his carte blanche over all along here? I thought that Canelo Alvarez was not the face of boxing. I thought that was Gervonta Tank Davis. Once again, these guys overall, when Canelo has mainly been on top, they've been trying to state that Canelo Alvarez was not the face of boxing. It was very clear that he was. And once again, I'm not this Canelo Alvarez lover or anything like that. But it's just silly overall, once again, to debate about, because you can clearly see who's the face of boxing. Canelo's last fight against Gennady Golovkin, I believe, like, dude, it did like about 1 million buys from what I remember. If I'm wrong, someone correct me. Like, Canelo at his worst does 300,000 pay-per-view buys. 300,000 to 500,000 pay-per-view buys. That's at his worst. And Gervonta Tank Davis and Errol Spence, they're doing that at their best. So like I said, it's no offense. I'm not trying to, insult any of these guys. But once again, a lot of these guys, whenever it comes to Canelo, they always try to insult his numbers overall when they may look possibly a little bit waned. But then when it comes to his good numbers, they don't usually mention it. So it's good on Ego overall that he's mentioning this. And once again, it is very clear right now that Canelo, that he is the face of boxing. Now, does that mean that he's the #1 pound-for-pound fighter right now or anything like that? No, it doesn't mean that, because right now I think he has to avenge the loss or work his way back up if he's going to be back in that position, potentially when it comes down to it. But once again, overall, just because overall you're not the #1 pound-for-pound fighter doesn't mean that you can't be the face of boxing. Terence Bud Crawford has certain more carte blanche in terms of pound-for-pound rankings, probably than what Gervonta Tank Davis does, but in terms of more of a face, at least when you talk about publicity, Gervonta Tank Davis overall does better numbers than what a Terence Bud Crawford does, period.
Comes to like pay-per-view, like where I'm like, I sold 1 million. What did Jay say? My uncle said I never sell 1 million records. I sold 1 million records like 1 million times, right? If you sold 1 million records 1 million times, okay, you got some leverage, you got some pull. Crawford is like saying stuff like, I have an SP, so therefore, I got the clout or I got the juice now. You know what I mean? And it doesn't work like that. At SP, that's something that people vote for. That doesn't give you leverage when it comes to someone who has outsold you, has a better resume. Errol Spence, Jermell Charlo, someone who's fought the top guys in their division outside of you. You know what I mean? Someone who's been on pay-per-view and done higher numbers. So it's
You know, once again, I'll say this about Jermell Charlo. I'm not really quite sure if Jermell Charlo 100% has a better resume. But with the win with Brian Gastano, you could maybe debate it. Once again, I don't think Tony Harrison was an A-grade fighter. I don't think that a lot of the fighters that Jermell Charlo fought in that division were A-grade fighters. That's why, in my opinion, if he is top 10 pound for pound, he's in the bottom 5, not top 5, in my opinion, because that division, in my opinion, is not one of the stronger weight divisions, and that's not me blaming Jermell Charlo. That's not me trying to shit all over him, but the biggest win of his career was that Brian Gastano fight. And in my opinion, the first time around, he probably should have very clearly lost. But it is what it is. But I understand what Ego is saying. Because Jermell Charlo, you could even possibly debate that the Brian Gastano win, that probably was a bigger win than the Sean Porter win. I would probably debate that as well.
crazy. We'll see where this turns up. But you got a former champion who beat Manny Pacquiao, the guy that eluded Crawford for years, that Crawford wanted to fight. He said he wanted to fight Pacquiao, never got it.
Well, he beat pretty much the done version of Manny Pacquiao, the Manny Pacquiao that had no legs left. But I understand where Ego is coming from. A guy that was a champion because he did beat Manny Pacquiao in his final fight. So you're talking about a guy that does have a little bit of carte blanche, a guy that overall has a little bit, I don't want to say clout when it comes down to it, but a guy that has a little bit of understanding, a guy that is a key player in the welterweight division. And obviously he shares the same opinion that a certain amount of other fighters or a certain amount of other people do about Terence Bud Crawford's resume.
Errol Spence got it, got injured, had to pull out, and then Ugas got it, beat Pacquiao. And he's saying he don't even know a guy in his same weight class. Like, I can understand if Ugas didn't know a cruiserweight, like Murat Gassiev or something, that would make a little bit more sense, because it's like, if you're a welterweight, you don't necessarily need to be checking that cruiserweight, so you're not going to know all the players. But we're talking about a former champion who was just former. By former, I mean just last April or May when he fought Errol Spence, he was a champion entering that fight. So just last year, he was a champion, and there's a guy who is in your same weight class, and Ugas seems like a good dude. He seems like a nice dude. So he's telling you, I'm not trying to be rude or funny style or violate. I don't know who Alexis Rocha is. So, again, you're talking about a welterweight in his weight category, and he don't even know who the man is. So if a fighter who would probably, like if you ask other teams in the same conference as Kobe Bryant, who Kobe Bryant was when he was up and coming, they would know who he is, because you're checking for you, like, oh, we're going to have to play against him. We're going to have to play against that monster, the Black Mamba, right? So you're usually checking.
I have a feeling Boxing Ego is a Kobe Bryant fan. If anyone can confirm that for me, not like anyone overall here would know, that'd be interesting.
And you got people on your radar if they're hot, right? That becomes your competitor. Your contemporary, if you will. So for Ugas to just have been a champion, and he said he don't even know this dude, never seen him fight, I mean, then what do you think the fans are going to, especially like more casual fans, they're not going to necessarily know and want to get behind the fight. But we'll see how this plays out. We'll see what Crawford decides. I'll leave it at that. Subscribe to the channel, and I'm out.
But anyways, that's really about it for the video. But I mainly agree with that of Mr. Boxing Ego and also with Mr. Yordenis Ugas. I don't think that this is a great fight. Obviously, that's pretty, severely obvious in my opinion. But hopefully Terence Bud Crawford eventually does get that Errol Spence Jr. fight. And hopefully for his sake, he is successful. Because if not, Terence Bud Crawford is going to get a great amount of grilling from that of the boxing community. So it's going to be very interesting. And not just from quote-unquote old media. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Just thought that I would talk about that convo. That's really about it. Thank you guys so much for watching.